You are audible, sir.
Okay, yeah, now I can hear you. Fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'm muting again.
No, you can start, sir. I have introduced you.
Okay. That part was not inaudible. That was not audible. Good. One should not listen to one own introduction. Okay. Good. Yes. So yeah, this technical problems always happen. Fine. So close these windows. Okay. Fine. So today's talk is on. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, so this is a series of talks for spanned over a few days related to cyber security, and many topics are being discussed here. On cryptography particularly, there are a few talks, and this is one of them. So this is dedicated to applications of cryptography, right? So this is not, technical algorithmic details about how to design a crypto system and how to attack a crypto system. So the scope of those topics are different, and maybe sometime else we can talk about those things. But today's topic is particularly focused on applications, like the fields where it can be applied. And of course, I will touch upon related um, topics of design and analysis that are related to applications. So that will be discussed. Okay, so feel free to stop me at any point of time and ask questions if you may have. So let's proceed. So I'll start with, there are four sections to my topic. First one is historical introduction, historical applications. Then I have modern applications, then looking into the future, and then conclusion. Okay, so first, historical application. So we know that cryptography has been applied in multiple countries, in multiple civilization from time immemorial. So for example, the Egyptian hieroglyphs, they contain a lot of cryptic messages, and many of them are still not deciphered. Okay, so to us, those are cryptographic messages, encrypted messages. Okay, in ancient Greece, around 700 BC, they used to use a device called skytel. Now, this is interesting. The sender and the receiver, they used to contain one stick that is shown here. The stick will have a bigger diameter at one end and a smaller diameter at the other end. And then a fixed length strip written on parchment paper or something of that sort, a strip containing letters of specific dimension, specific size, and the strip will have certain width and height, and the letters will be written in such a way that if one opens the strip and read from left to right, then one cannot understand anything. The letters will not have any meaning. However, if one wraps that particular strip around this stick, and after wrapping, if one looks at the characters that are aligned in one straight line, then the word formed by those characters in a straight line definitely means something, right? So for example, here in the picture, you can see that after wrapping the strip around the stick, G is aligned with U, that is aligned with S, then T, then I, then N, then H, and A. So this is supposed to mean something. I mean, this is just for example. So here, what is the secret key? If we want to think in terms of cryptographic mapping, the secret key is the stick itself along with its specification. So the stick of a particular diameter, particular length, particular diameter at one end and a particular diameter at the other end. The whole specification of the stick is the secret key. Okay. Then in ancient Rome, around 100 BC, Julius Caesar used one cipher, which many of you know as Caesar's cipher, right? So there, he used to send secret messages to his marshal on the battlefield, and every character was shifted by 3 positions. So A would become D, B would become E, C would become F, and so on and so forth. So the marshal had to, shift all the letters to the left by 3 position to retrieve the meaning. And this has come to known as the Caesarian cipher. Okay. Next, this is a very interesting application. So 1791 and 92 AD, during that time, Count Queen Mary Antoinette had sent a few love letters to Count Axel von Fersen. Okay, and those were written using cryptography. And till 2009, those letters were not deciphered. And because of this famous paper, one can look at the ICR Cryptology Print Archive. Valery Nechev and Jack Patterine, they have actually solved this deciphering problem and found what are the contents of those letters. Okay, so in their paper they describe the mathematical formalism that are there behind these letters and how they decrypted. They have named the paper title very interestingly, "I shall love you up to the death." So this is one sentence in one of those letters, and after deciphering, this sentence has been selected as the title to make the paper interesting. Okay, so this is you can read. Then those of you who are fond of Sherlock Holmes, they know the adventure of the dancing men, right? There are a lot of such diagrams were used to convey certain cryptic messages. Okay, the adventure of the dancing men. So each dancing pose denotes something, right? Denote a message. Okay. Then the famous fiction, Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown, 2003. It talks about a device called Cryptex, which actually looks similar to the Greek skytel, which we talked about here, right? So this is kind of a sophisticated version of skytel, you can say. And instead of one stick, you can imagine there are 5 sticks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like, they are arranged along an axis, and then there are rotors. So each disk, so these are in the form of disks. Now, depending on your secret key, each disk will rotate by a certain position, and then after specific amounts of rotations being applied on each of these disks, the final alignment will be used to read the message and decipher the message. Okay. Okay. Then just before the Second World War in Germany, 1920 AD, they used a cipher called Enigma. So it also had a rotor machine, but also with a keyboard to enter the input. It has 3 scramblers. Scrambler means that which causes permutations of the characters entered, right? So it scrambles the data, then a reflector and a lamp board to visualize. Then it was contained inside a box. So Americans, French, and British together tried to break the system, but they were unsuccessful until 1932, when it was broken by a Polish mathematician called Marian Rejewski. And finally, in 1939, they handed it over to the British. Okay. There was another cipher called Lorentz, used by Germany around Second World War. So It was used for their army communication. It had a metal base and it had a pseudo-random number generator, which used to be XORed with the input characters. So it was like a one-time pad. It was again broken by British mathematician William Tutt, T-U-T-T. Okay, so modern cryptography began with Claude Shannon, the father of mathematical cryptography. Interestingly, Claude Shannon is the father of three major subjects within computer and communication sciences. One subject is information theory, which tells how a data should be compressed, to what extent a data can be compressed. The second subject that he gave rise to is coding theory, that talks about how to correct error in the data when noise is added during the transmission. It can be atmospheric noise, it can be channel noise, but the receiver receives noisy data, how to correct it and get back the original data. So that's the subject of coding theory. That's the second subject that he initiated. Before him, these subjects did not exist. So information theory talks about compression, right? You know, like zip or RAR or any such compression algorithm works based on the principle of information theory. Then coding theory is for, you know, decoding noisy messages and to get rid of the noise. And the third subject that he initiated was cryptography, modern cryptography or the mathematical cryptography. And it appeared in Shannon's seminal paper in 1949 when he was working as an engineer in Bell Systems Technical Journal. Okay, so the paper is called Communication Theory of Secrecy Systems. So you can find a PDF version of it for free in the internet. I can read it. It's a pretty interesting paper to read. Okay, so current application domains of cryptology. So we know cryptography is used to protect sensitive government data. Now, what could be sensitive government data? Sensitive government data not only means it's data about the defense or data about the army or data related to the national borders. Not only, it definitely includes that, but it's not limited to that. Now, sensitive government data could be certain, predictive model that determines the economy of the country. It can be some secret information about the Reserve Bank of India. It can be, information about research, high-end scientific research that the government is not willing to publish until a result is obtained. Maybe some mission is being taken up. So that kind of data, even Bhabha Atomic Research Center, they also protect their data using cryptography, because though they are not directly related to national defense, but the topic they do research on, the nuclear reactors, those are sensitive data, government sensitive data, so those needs to be protected. So and even let's say the data of its own citizen, right? The data of its native people. So some data the government can share with the outside world, with other countries, with United Nations, but there are certain sensitive data related to privacy and related to government plan and implementation, the government policies, right? So not everything can be made public. So those are sensitive government data, and definitely those needs protection. So government sector is definitely a strong consumer of cryptographic application. Okay. Next level is network security for professionals. So if someone is working in a multinational company, now that MNC can work on many projects. So they have clients and they have to sign NDA, non-disclosure agreement with the clients, because clients are paying them money to do the project. So those project specific data are very sensitive. Data of one client should not be leaked to another client, right? So when a communication happens in an MNC scenario between client and the company or amongst the company professional, right? The communication can happen over a network, over email, over their internal server. All of these needs to be protected and encrypted. Okay. The third is privacy and safety for the common people. So we may think that common people do not need cryptography. No, nowadays, common people definitely need cryptography in their day-to-day life. Imagine a person walking into an ATM and inserting the debit card into the ATM machine, right, and trying to extract some money. So he or she enters the PIN code, like on the panel, and those PIN codes are converted into electromechanical signals, and they are traveling as bits. So it's going through the cable underground from the machine to the server, to the bank server. So in transit, anyone can tap that channel and try to read that information, or someone can try to extract it from the keyboard itself. They can insert some side channel reader, right? They can try to capture the pattern. So there are all sorts of things. Even the debit card may be lost, okay, or credit card may be lost. Someone may be buying something using credit card or debit card or net banking online from Amazon, from Flipkart, right? So e-commerce. So all these things in our day-to-day life require cryptographic protocols to provide safety and security to our transactions. Okay. Next. So examples I have given: online credit card, bank ATM, instant mobile recharge. So when you buy a prepaid coupon, so that coupon had certain code, and that code has to be provided in order to prove that you are a valid user. Okay. Prepaid electricity coupons, these are not yet launched in our country, but if you go to South Africa, I will see that they use such coupons similar to our mobile recharge. Then pay TV channel, right? So that also you can observe the channels only if you pay for them, right? Otherwise you cannot, though all the signals are coming to your TV. Okay, so cryptography, there are 4 primary goals. Okay, the first goal is confidentiality, the second goal is data integrity, the third goal is authentication, and the fourth goal is non-repudiation. So briefly I will mention here what do they mean. So confidentiality mean basically except sender and receiver, no other third party can understand the data. Okay, now by the word understand the data, I mean that they may have an access to the data. They may actually observe the data, they may copy the data, they may process the data, they may run any algorithm on the data, but they cannot understand the meaning of the data. So confidentiality does not mean that they do not see the data or they do not have access to the data. Confidentiality means even if they have full access to the entire data, they should be able to extract zero information out of it. That's what is the requirement of confidentiality, and that is provided by cryptographic encryption and decryption function. Okay, now data integrity. Data integrity talks about authenticity of the data. That means whatever data was sent from the sender end, whether the same data was received at the receiver end or not, whether someone has inserted anything into the data or deleted something from the data or altered few bits of the data, whether that has happened or not. So that is done by data integrity protocols. The third application is authentication. Here authentication means actually entity authentication or end user authentication or identification. So basically before the communication begins, right, the sender Alice and the receiver Bob, they have to establish to each other that yes, they are indeed Alice and Bob, they are not anyone else. Alice needs to make sure that she is communicating to Bob and not to anyone else. And Bob needs to make sure that he is communicating to Alice and no one else. So that is called authentication, right? Then the fourth requirement is non-repudiation. This is a peculiar requirement, but it's often, practically shows up in our day-to-day life. Okay, so for example, let's say in the non-digital domain, right? So you pay advance money to someone, right, to buy something, okay, and then the person takes the money on verbal commitment, and next day he or she denies, right? So you have paid the money to buy something as an advance. Now when you claim, then that person denies, then your money is lost. So how do we prevent it in our non-digital domain, in our day-to-day life? Okay, whenever we give a money, we take a receipt. So that person should write to you that, okay, received such and such amount as an advance for such and such thing, and then sign below that particular document, and you should be able to keep that document with yourself, so that later on that person cannot deny. So in non-digital domain, we have this method of non-repudiation. So to repudiate means to deny, and repudiation means denial, and non-repudiation means non-denial. That means inability to deny prior commitments. If anyone has committed to something, that person cannot deny later and say that I have not committed. So that is meant by non-repudiation, and in digital domain, non-repudiation is achieved by cryptographic protocols. Okay. So in cryptography, we have two basic kinds of crypto system: symmetric key and asymmetric key. We'll not go into detail, but we'll just touch briefly so that we can talk about applications. So in symmetric key is very simple. The same key is used for encryption and decryption. So as if you have a safe, you open the same key to lock it and unlock it, right? And there are two main paradigms of cipher in symmetric key crypto system. One is called block cipher, the other is called stream cipher. In block cipher, as the name suggests, the message is divided into fixed length block, and each block is encrypted with the same key. Encryption involves complicated mixing of the plain text with the key. Whereas in stream cipher, there, as the name suggests, the message comes as a continuous stream of data. So here P stands for plain text message. It's coming as a stream of bits, right? So the encryption operation means that the sender and the receiver will generate the same bit stream, that is called K, capital K underscore STR in the diagram is the same bit stream that is generated at the sender and the receiver end. So at the sender end, they will do bit by bit XOR operation of the plain text with that stream, and on the receiver end, the same stream will be XORed with the ciphertext. So the same bit string being XORed twice should cancel each other, and the P on the right hand side retrieved at the receiver end should be the same as the P on the left hand side. So that's in short what is stream cipher. Okay, so issues with symmetric key is that advantage is they are very fast and the security is also high. The disadvantage is the secure key distribution is a major issue. What do we mean that? So for example, in order to generate the key stream on both sides, they need certain secret key, this capital K, right? So this capital K, how do they transmit? That's one big problem. So key distribution, that means sharing a key, is a big problem. So, and also it is hard to operate on a large distributed platform, and if one participant is compromised, then everything is compromised. So that is the problem in symmetric key, because everyone is using the same key. If there are 20 people in a group, they are sharing a common key. So if one person is compromised, all the other 19 are compromised. Okay. Now in public key paradigm, Okay, we have a different key for encryption and decryption. Okay, so the lock is designed in such a way that we need different key. So public key framework is very simple. The Alice, the receiver, generates two pairs of keys. One is called public key, the other is called private key. This is called key generation step. Then the next step is called key distribution step. So they publish the public key and keep the private key secret. Then at the sender end, they receive the public key of Alice and they use it to encrypt the message and send to Alice. So the public key is used here for encryption and the private key will be used for decryption. What does the receiver do? The receiver obtains the ciphertext sent by Bob and decrypt, use the private key to decrypt the ciphertext. So the public key is used by the sender, the private key is used by the receiver. But here the public key and the private key both are of the receiver. So the receiver has, everyone has a pair of key, everyone. One is public, another is private. So here in this particular case, it is the receiver's private key that matters and the receiver's public key that matters for encryption and decryption. Okay, next, authentication, integrity, and non-repudiation we mentioned. So most authentication, integrity, and non-repudiation protocol are implemented using what is called a digital signature, right? I was telling you of an example of signing something and telling, yes, I have taken the money as an advance for something. So ability to sign a document means you cannot deny it later because it will match with your signature. So the same thing is done by digital signature so that you cannot deny your commitment later. So it uses hash function in a public key framework. So hash functions are typically maps from arbitrary length bit string to fixed length bit string, right? So we fix certain number. Let's say any file, no matter how many gigabyte or how many megabyte you give, after a hash function is operated on the file, then the hash that you obtain or the message digest that you obtain is of, let's say, fixed 64-bit or 80-bit. So it's as simple as that. And hash function should have some desirable property. So it should be easy to compute. It should be feasible to find a message mapping to a given hash. It should be feasible to modify a message without changing its hash. And it would be feasible to find two messages with the same hash. That is called hash collision. Okay. Otherwise, forging will happen. If two, messages have the same hash, then it will be a forgery. Okay. So, certain new applications are coming up. So at the present date, these are like the future of modern day crypto system. So identify friend or foe. That is very typical in the army scenario or the military framework where you cannot distinguish a person by his or her external clothes or behavior or any kind of input. So you have to use certain digital protocol to identify whether a particular individual is your friend or foe. Someone is sending you some message, okay, let's meet at this time at this point. How do you know it's not from the opponent, it's your own fellow? So to that kind of thing, identify friend or foe requires certain protocol. Okay, the next one is key establishment. Let me see certain. Okay, so one second. So key establishment, we already talked about that. Symmetric key requires the secret key to be shared or established among the sender and the receiver, whereas for public key there is no such requirement. Okay, now secret sharing. Okay, so secret sharing is something which is used in army. So for example, you want to operate a missile, right? Now the missile, whether a missile will be operated or not, or when it will be operated, that should not be decided by a single individual. So what is done typically is that the missile can be launched with a code, right? And that code is shared among, let's say, 7 major general. And the scheme is such that if only at least a minimum 4 out of 7 major general they meet together and they run a protocol together, they agree to generate the code together, only then they will be able to launch the missile. So if 3 major agree, they won't be able to do, but only if 4 agree, then they will be able to launch. So it is called 4 out of 7 secret sharing protocols. So in general, we can have k out of 7, k out of n secret sharing protocols. So there will be, the secret will be distributed among n individual, and any k can actually recover the secret, reconstruct the secret. And one specific example of how it is done is through polynomial models, and that was due to Shamir. So from example is that you can imagine that this ax square plus bx plus c, right? So here your c is the secret that you want to construct. Okay, how can you construct? If you know the polynomial, then you can construct the secret, you can extract the secret from the polynomial. Now how can you construct the polynomial? So what happens that on this polynomial curve there are data, right? So we know that every 2 point defines a straight line, every 3 points will define a quadratic curve, every 4 point will define a curve of degree 3, and so on and so forth. So here, if there are 5 individuals, if we plot the curve and generate, let's say, 5 points on the curve and share coordinates, x and y coordinates of those 5 points, each coordinate to each individual, each of the 5%, then if any 3 out of those 5% meet together, they will plug in their x and y coordinate values, and with those 3 x and y coordinate values we can uniquely find out the 2-degree polynomial. What is ax square plus bx plus c? We can find out from any 3 point on the curve, but less than 3 point we cannot uniquely identify the polynomial, right? So once we identify the polynomial, c, the secret can be extracted. So this is just one way how a secret sharing scheme can work. But of course, there are many different ways of secret sharing. So secret sharing not only has military application, it has application, let's say, in your bank locker, right? So your bank locker, at least, let's say, you can have a mechanism that you should be present, the bank manager should be present, and at least one other officer. So minimum 3 persons are required to actually open the locker code. So that can happen. Okay. So broadcast encryption. So someone has asked a question, Mr. Nagesh, that secret key these days also share on mobile. No, this is not safe. You should not share secret key on mobile. Okay. So there are methods of sharing secret key. You should run cryptographic protocol to share secret key. Okay, next is broadcast encryption. Broadcast encryption is like the cable TV is an example of broadcast encryption, right? So, so basically what it means is that the sender is broadcasting the message, right? So it can be a Wi-Fi message, it can be satellite message, it can be whatever. It's flooded in the network outside, right? In all channels. So the sender is broadcasting the message, but though the sender is broadcasting and theoretically any receiver has access to the message, but only intended recipient can decipher the message. So there may be 10 million receivers receiving the message, but only 3 receiver I am targeting who should be able to decipher, and the rest cannot. So that is the goal of broadcast encryption. Okay, then zero knowledge proof. Zero knowledge proof is very interesting. So here what happens is that suppose you know a secret, right? And then your opponent asks you to prove that you know the secret. Now there are 2 ways to prove that you know the secret. First way is that you tell the secret to your opponent, right? Now then the problem is the secret is revealed. So by telling the secret, you prove that you know the secret, but the secret is revealed, right? Because you do not know that whether your opponent who is asking that, okay, prove that you know the secret, whether that person at all has the secret or not. So maybe it is a trick. Maybe asking you or trying to verify that you know the secret is a way of knowing the secret from you, right? So zero knowledge mean somehow you will convince your opponent that you know the secret without actually telling the secret. Okay, so here is an example of zero knowledge proof. So you can see that you know, Peggy is the guy who claims that he has key to the secret lab. This is the top secret lab shown here, and the doors are locked, and Peggy claims that he has a key. So what Victor does, that Victor asks Peggy to actually travel through the right and come out of the left. Okay, so Peggy comes here and goes down. Okay, so Peggy comes here and goes down, and then is supposed to enter the lab through this door and come out of the lab through the top door. So if Peggy comes out from right, he has entered through right and he should come from left. But if he comes out from right, we know that he may not have the key to the lab. But if Peggy comes out from the left, then definitely he has key to the lab. Otherwise, how he would have, you know, transmitted from, how he would have transferred himself from the right end to the left end. So that is a zero knowledge proof. Say the Peggy is not handing over the key to Victor, but by his movement, by his motion of entering and exiting, he is proving Victor that he has key to the secret lab. So that is the goal, zero knowledge. That means we are proving something without transferring any knowledge. Okay. So there are several upcoming applications nowadays for cryptography. So one is called homomorphic encryption, right? So this is, some of you may already know. Now it means that you want to do arithmetic on the encrypted data. Without decrypting data, you want to add to ciphertext, right? You want to multiply to ciphertext such that, or you want to do equivalent operations on the ciphertext such that the new ciphertext that you obtain is actually corresponds to the product or some other function of the individual plain text without deciphering. Okay, so next is searchable encryption. That means you have a database, that whole database is encrypted. Now you want to search the database in the cloud, maybe the database is stored in the cloud, and you want to search it without deciphering the database, because if you decipher the database, or if the decipher is decrypted in the cloud, then many other clients can have access to the database. So this is called searchable encryption. That means without decrypting, how can you search? Okay. Leakage resilient crypto system. That means theoretically you can guarantee that your crypto system will not leak any information. This is actually side channel resistant kind of mechanism. Then the fourth one is tamper resilient crypto system. That means if your crypto system, someone tries to access it, then something will be broken, some hardware lock will be gone, and the system will be unusable. Like nowadays there are certain chips that come out that comes with some coating, with some kind of a cover. So if you want to see what is inside the chip, if you want to open the chip, then you have to break the cover. Okay, so then it is called tamper resilient crypto system. That means without breaking you cannot access anything. The last but not the least upcoming application is quantum cryptography. It's a buzzword that everyone is using nowadays. So using quantum mechanical phenomena to design cryptographic algorithms, cryptographic applications to ensure data protection and stuff like that. So it's almost 5 o'clock and my time is up. So I'll stop here and take any question that you may have. Any question?
Participants, if you have any question, you may write in the chat box. Sir, I believe there is no questions here. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'll thank you very much for this session. It was quite interesting. Well, the
Welcome.
basics of that applications of cryptography, how it is being used, and where actually it applies to our day-to-day life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. We hope
Welcome.
you will be able to support us in future
Sure.
programs, sir.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Bye. Thank you.